Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings, and welcome to Saturn is direct time in your life. Saturn has stationed direct at 25 degrees of Pisces. That is why I'm making this video for you. This is a big shift. This is a big shift in a bigger cycles that we have been working with for a while now. And it's a moment when we are moving forward. Okay, now, that said, we are moving forward within the final stage of being in Pisces, which is the watery, oceanic, cosmic womb that we are being birthed out of in February of 2026. So that is when Neptune and Saturn make their conjunction in Aries at the very beginning of Aries. That's when we're going to really be chatting about the new structures that you are embodying. Embodying is a key word when we're in that stage. But now we are working with Pisces energy, the final 5 degrees of Pisces, remembering that Neptune is right now at the final degree of Pisces, but Saturn has been retrograde. If you're new to my channel, this is Charlotte's tail, which belongs to Charlotte, the cat. For folks that know Charlotte, she says hello. And, you know, we are journeying forth. Now, there's several layers of this energy. And how are you ready to begin working with the new identity, sense of self that has taken a formation in your psyche? Okay. Again, it's still in a process of forming. And as this happens, this direct movement of Saturn happens trine Jupiter retrograde in Cancer and trine Venus in Scorpio. So this energy is very much about your inner world, your inner psyche. It is about the return home on firstly a spiritual level, on an emotional level, on your physical home. You know, it is about nourishment. It is a Venus and Scorpio approaching the final degrees of Scorpio is juicy, divine, feminine, like pomegranate seed in the depths, churning the inner cauldron. But like there, she is working with experiences of relationship that like are so beyond whatever the mainstream guru is telling us a healthy relationship is. You know, I think it's so important that when we work with embodied archetypal evolutionary astrology, it is going to work with paradigms that are not aligned. They might at times overlap, but they do not have the same source as any normative mainstream narrative. Okay. And a lot of times we're kind of like, well, I don't want that one, but I want that one, and I don't want that one. And astrology is ultimately, it's a different structure of understanding why we're here and what we're here for. And that is what this Saturn and Neptune are all about. And so the fact that this happens still in a water trine means it is about your emotional being. It is about your psyche. It is about your healing. And it is about the new path that's emerging for you because of what has been totally dissolving in how you understand yourself and how you understand your purpose. What if your future path was absolutely not coming from proving yourself to anyone or anything? So much of the paths that we set out on, especially when we're young adults, come from trying to prove something. Usually that's an entwinement of our own personal trauma and social stories. It's our parents' trauma. It's intergenerational. It has to do with class status. It has to do with all these different intersections. And while that can propel folks in mighty ways, it's also not always aligned to what we really want or need. And the beauty of this moment is that the Saturn and the Neptune conjunction, and the fact that it's Saturn, and that it's in Pisces right now, it's about what we need on a deep level that goes way, way beyond what a choice made out of trying to prove oneself is. But it's also so important for the social structures that are going to become, that are possible, that haven't even been possible, because humans haven't been in a place of awareness and embodiment and consciousness. And while the mass consciousness is not here or there, there is this incredible awakening going on, this incredible shifting of the gaze into those more kind of what we call soul alignments, what you're really here for. And so that is what you're really here for at this point, is not to do something because you're trying to prove that you can be successful, that you're trying to prove that you can do this. You're not proving it to, a lot of times it is a parent, a grandparent, a teacher, an early relationship. It is something there. But eventually it becomes that we're trying to prove it to ourselves because we've appropriated into our sense of being all of those external authority figures. And this is Saturn in Pisces. This is the bone mother. This is the bone mother who is not here to say life is supposed to suck. It's supposed to be horrible. And that's how you learn your lesson. That is such an old, outdated, patriarchal interpretation of purpose and life and work. But do not be fooled, because that bone mother works. She is disciplined. She knows grief and she knows death. And she has got the most beautiful weathery lines and calluses. And she does not try to cover them over, because they are a testament to the living grace that is her acceptance of what is required on this plane, in these bodies, being part of nature. And that is an alignment that Saturn's true archetypal resonance brings us into. And that alignment wants to connect with your truest desires of your soul. And that is what we are in the process of moving forward with now. Forward towards that birthing. This is still Pisces. This is still symbol and dream and poetry and mystical experiences that, when we try and put them in a box of categorical understanding, do not fit and make us really confused. It requires allowing ourselves to come into the gifts and remembering of other ways of knowing. And that Saturn is stationing direct means that some of that confusion and disorientation, that is shifting. And there is kind of forward movement in a nonlinear way. And so here it's so important to begin dreaming in to what you want your aligned passions in life and, to look like when you're not trying to prove something, especially aligned to an ideology that you most likely don't want anything to do with. But, they get internalized. They create pockets of shame and self-doubt, and that inner critic and all of that. And a lot of that is housed in the body in the opposite sign of Virgo. And we have had such mighty Virgo cleansings, and it's still going on because the South Node is still in Virgo. And it is important to begin putting in those practices that especially connect you to your spiritual path. It could be lighting a candle and sitting with it for a minute a day. It could be meditation. It could be an art practice. It could be, writing, whatever it is. Saturn says it's not enough to just sit and manifest, because even if we manifest something in that traditional way it's taught, a lot of times it's coming from a wound. A lot of times it's coming from the need to prove. And Saturn, especially the Saturn, says the beauty of being in this plane is that we also put in our embodied work. We feel the mind and the body connect to earth, and that creates the path that takes us. And it's not about just having something. It's about being the path, and that comes from the practice. It comes from the dedication. It comes from commitment. And it comes from being weathered. That's the crone. That's the elder wisdom here. That's the grandparent. And this is part of what you're embodying as you move forward. And so do commit to those practices, because it's an act of self-love, and it's an act of commitment to the goddess, and it's an act of why you're here. And that is the medicine that's going to bring you into the new reality that is not formed yet, that we are months away from, that we are not really supposed to be directing our energy towards. This is about, remember, Jupiter is retrograde talking to this Saturn. This is about a homecoming. A homecoming that Venus at the final degrees of Scorpio wants such a divinely beautiful intimacy with. But again, it's an intimacy that is probably messy, that is not clear cut, that doesn't, this is water energy. It doesn't fit in boxes. It seeps through when you try, and then that seeping confuses us because we haven't been being honest with what water wants, and water wants to flow. It wants to feel. It wants intuition to be the guiding stream. And when we flow with water, we might have a general idea, like that river knows it's going to the ocean, right? But the details of what that life is going to look like, we're not supposed to know, because we're supposed to be enjoying the flow. And that enjoyment isn't something that's always happy. It comes from presence. It comes from Saturn's wisdom that I'm in this plane, and I have to sit and meditate, or I have to drum, or I have to go for that walk, or I have to have that conversation, or I have to journal with myself. And Saturn, it gets so distorted in pop astrology and mainstream interpretations. I absolutely love Saturn. And I think when we allow Saturn, especially when we approach Saturn from our embodied journey and we work with what Saturn is in our chart, and this is getting a little bit more advanced, but it opens us up to this relationship with ourself in which we don't have to fear ourselves, we don't have to feel shame. Saturn is about honesty. It's about honesty of what is real. And when we accept what is real, aligned with Neptune, which is what is real beyond the ordinary ways of being in this plane, that's magic with a K. And that is creating literally the new realities that we need on this plane. And it is related to society and structures and new structures. But right now it's about your soul and your healing and your path. And do begin as an act of self-love and self-care, embodying the path that you want. Say it out loud to yourself, whether it's about vocation or relationship or just how to be in a healthy relationship or how to be in a healthy relationship with yourself, or opening up to bringing more creativity and spirituality into your life, healing the witch wound. It's all here and it's all supporting us. Not to mention that this Saturn movement is happening while there is incredible fiery energy of Mars conjunct Black Moon Lilith, true Black Moon Lilith conjunct Hecate and Juno, all in Sag. And they are having a bonfire and dancing and ceremony to whatever you're calling back into your remembrance of old lineage birthed anew, coming into this life. And that newness, Hecate, that is not proving. Black Moon Lilith, we are not proving ourselves to ideologies of power over rooted in patriarchy that no one ever wanted. Yet we can spend decades trying to prove ourselves. And this is for all of us, all genders. When it gets internalized, oh, join the bonfire, dance with grief. If grief is here, of course grief can be here. These are the final degrees of the zodiac with Saturn and Neptune. Grief does not mean it's wrong or bad. Grief is a language of love, and we are in the waters of unconditional love. But it doesn't make sense, those waters, when we try and direct them into a very limited way of understanding that fits in boxes that we check off. That's just not what this is. And if that's what we're trying to do, we're probably going to come up against resistance, tension, body, mind, aches, situations. This is about letting go. And that's the piece that I kind of started. So we'll go full circle. You know, we are in Pisces. This is letting go. And so the beauty is that it's a simultaneous, as we're letting go, as things are dissolving, we are embracing our Saturn wisdom and being called into the practices that we're starting. And in that way, we can still be active and letting go. It's the beautiful infinity spiral. And even just meditating with that infinity spiral is really quite lovely for the Saturn and Neptune energy here. Okay. So welcome to the final stage of the ending and the beginning. Here we go. Lots of love. Bye-bye.